Okay, so in this section we are going to implement a book review server. So up to till now we have been using the CLI and running the code. Our project has not been accessible from the web page, and that's what we are going to do. And in the previous section, I believe you learned what is an internet, the IP address and the DNS, and then you went to the packets, HTTP, HTML. So you have a good understanding of how the internet works. And in summary, basically it's a client server thing, where a client is a browser, and then the browser is communicating to the server, and it's communicating to the server via a protocol called HTTP, and it's mainly using an IP address. So normally we don't use IP address. So for instance, if we do something like google.com, we have used, this one is a domain, but then this domain is pointing to a particular IP address. So if I like use the DNS Google helper here, if I type this one is, if I type google.com here and then call resolve, so it will resolve these or translate these into an IP address. So this is your actual IP address. Just like, for example, in an area you can call an area, let's say you can call an area Kenya. For me, Kenya is like a DNS. The actual location of Kenya is being specified by the longitude and the latitude. But then telling everyone that you live in this longitude and latitude is that it's a lot of details, so people want to remember that you're in this latitude and longitude. So use something like that, like Kenya, and then Kenya can be translated to the actual latitude and longitude. So similar to the DNS, so like google.com will be translated to these. So these are the actual IP address you use for Google. So if we put something like this here, so it will go to Google. So I've accessed Google via the IP address. So in our case, we will do the same. We want to access our page in an IP address .0.0.1. So this is an IP address that has been reserved for your localhost machine. So your machine, if you put something like this, let's say 8001, the browser will try and access these from your from this machine that I'm using. And then if you do it on your own machine, it won't try and look for the server outside of the machine, much like what I do something. So if I do 172.217 and 70, the browser will try and look this. It will go to the router that I have here, and then the router will have this one. It will go up to my internet provider, and then from there it will go up to where this server is located. So technically a server is like my machine, but it's somewhere else with a public IP address. So if I put something like this, that goes to Google. We want to achieve the same thing with 127.0.0.1 to go to our own machine. And then once it's in our own machine, we go to port 8001. So the one that I was using here, you notice I didn't put a port, because if you don't put a port, technically it goes to port 80. So if I do this colon port 80, that will go again to Google. So in our case, you want to use 8001 to go to our own machine, and then the DNS to our machine is localhost. So if we put a localhost and we put 001 again, like something like this, to try to go to, it will resolve the localhost to an IP address that's 127.27 and then go to our own machine. Now, notice it's not responding. The site can't be reached, and that's because our server is not running. And that's what we are going to implement in this class. So most of the details, you don't have to go into the details. They are about sockets, and the course is not really about sockets. We just need to understand on a high level how the servers work. So I'll start by importing a socket, and then once I have a socket, I need a way. Okay, let me just come here first. I need a way of running this server. So I'll just remember this annotation we learned on the previous session, where I don't want the server to be called directly. I want it to be called when I call this Python, so that when someone is importing this file, it won't run the server. So at this point is where I will call the server. So I'll give it a host of let's say the one that we are talking about, 127.0.0.1, and then we'll use the port that we are trying to access here, 8001. And then if I run this Python server, nothing happens, right? Because I don't have anything on my server here. So I'll start by creating a socket. So again, the details of the sockets are not that important, but yeah, just following. listening, so I'll call it a listening socket, and then I'll call the socket that I've imported .sock. So it has a method called socket. This will give me an instance of a socket, but then I need to provide parameters. So there are types of address. The 127 that we are talking about, or the one that I posted for Google, those are referred to us as IPv4. So I'll just specify that I need an IPv4 here. There's an IPv6 if you want to. So you can see here there's an IPv4. This one is 4 by default, and then there's another one for 6. Can go into details later on that one, and then I'll just mention that I want to use TCP by putting sock stream. Right, now the next thing I need to do is to put the address that I'm going to bind to. So I'll do like a listening socket dot I'm telling the socket that I've created bind to this IP address. It takes a tuple. With 2 items. So the one will be host and port, the one that we have that have been passed here. And then once we listen to that, this one is a bit complicated, but I need to set an option here for set sock option. I'll give it a level, so I'll just give it a level of, so this one you can ignore because it's a bit low level. Yeah, but mainly I just want to reuse my addresses, so that's why I'm giving it this option for reuse IP address exactly once. So it's an option just for reusing. It can actually be ignored, so let's give it once. So I'm using that once, and then so I have my socket. The other thing I need to do is to start listening. So I'll call the command for listening socket dot listen, and then I'll give it 5, and then so that's it. The other thing I need to do is while. So remember, a server, it's always running, and then it's always running and waiting for requests. So we'll use a while true. So if someone connects, we need to accept that connection. So I'll just put a client connection, the client address here. So I'll call the listening sockets, and I will accept connection that come to this server. Now the server being my local server, the accept returns a tuple. That's why I'm recording it to that. And then once a client has connected, I need to get the data. It's called request data that the client is sending. So I'll do client connection dot receive. So this one is a blocking call. It will wait until the client has finished sending all the requests. And from here we can actually even print. You can actually print the request data. Like this. Request data. So the request data is decoded, so I will just call the method encode on it. So the encode will just return a string, and from here I can like start my server. So first I just put a print here, starting server, and then if I run this, you'll see starting server. So notice that if I come here, initially it was site cannot be reached, but right now if I click 8001, it has actually you can see here it has failed. You can see it's failing because I'm trying to the byte object. Yeah, I'm trying to encode a byte instead of decode. So it's already encoded, so I need to decode it. Okay, start the server again. So it's saying address already in use. So this is important to note that we can't use an address multiple times. So it's saying an address already in use because probably it hasn't been released, and maybe it's taking a bit of time for it to be released. What I'll do, I'll just create a new one, another port, one that hasn't been used. So starting server. So again, notice here I need to change the port here to 2. So if I start, you can see it has come here. So this is the request data, the one that I've printed. So this is the format of the request data. It always starts with the type of the method. So in this case, it's a get, and then a path, and then the type of the HTTP, and then from there on we have a key value of a host connection, and the type of the request depends on the whether you are dealing with whether you're working with a get or a post or a put. So normally in a post there will be now post data, but in this one are all just headers. And then notice our browser is still loading because it has sent a request to our server. The server came here, we printed, but we never closed the connection, and we never send data back to the browser. So it was a bit so it's still loading because the connection was not closed and the data was not sent back to the browser. So that's what we're going to do here. So we'll come here and we now need to send data and then close the connection. So do the way we send data is we do the client connection dot send all. So even when you're sending the data needs to be in a particular format. So that will be HTTP, starting with HTTP.o, like the type of the HTTP, and then after that one space I say that status code, and we'll come to this later. Status code is just what we use to say that the server is saying, okay, 200, the request was correct, and this depends with type of status code. So we come, there are multiple types of status code. There's one for 404 that we can't find that, or 502, something like that, but for now let's focus on the simple case. And then according to the protocol you need to send that, and then I'll send our what we need to send. So here I'll just put hello world, and so that will be it, but this is a string, so we need to decode it because we need to send bytes. And then once you send the request, the thing we need to do is on the client connection we need to close this, and then maybe for clarity's sake I'll just say done serving the request, done serving request. Okay, so if I come back to my server here and start my server, if we come here, so remember initially it was hung, it wasn't responding with anything. So I'll try. So it has already failed because I tried refreshing, and again same mistake here. So I have a string I need now to encode, not decode. So I'll just do that, and then server is already in use, so I'll just try and see if the first one has been released. And the first one has been released. I'll come here, go back to 8.1, and now you can see it has responded with something, hello world. Now our server is responding with something, and then we are done, and then it can wait on another request, because remember it's a for loop. So you can now we have another hello world here, hello world here. So that thing that I'll just make a small change here is I just, instead of returning just a text for hello world, I'll return an HTML page. The page will be look something like this. HTML, so I'll start with that, and then close the HTML page, and then on the HTML I'll do the body, and then here we'll put the h1 hello world h1, and then so here instead of returning an hello world I'll just return my HTML page. Hello world, and then so I need to so that you can pick the new code, and then if I come here, see we have a hello world in bold, and then it's white. So that's the first HTML page we have loaded. Notice I can do the same thing with the localhost. If I load the localhost is resolving to 127, and then it's coming to this one, and so that's how